In 1972, a company took a watch made out of plain steel and it priced it higher more than solid gold. The entire industry said they're just killing themselves. Steel was for tools and gold was for luxury. Nobody would pay gold money for steel. The company was Audemars Piguet, and that one insane decision didn't just work, it saved them, and it created a whole new category of luxury that still prints money until today. By the end of this video, you'll understand why a plumber, a flooring business, a renovation company should think exactly like they did. Because this isn't a story about selling watches or about watches. It's about how you set your prices right.
High in the Swiss mountains, there's a valley called Valley du Joux. In the 1900s, the winters here were long, brutal, and silent. The farmers of this valley couldn't work the frozen land for months at a time, so they did something extraordinary. In the dark and the cold, by candlelight, they taught themselves to build the most complicated mechanical watches in the world. Two boys grew up in this world. Jules Louis Audemars, a gifted maker, obsessed with the movement, the tiny beating heart of a watch, and Edward Auguste Piguet, just as skilled, but with a mind for people, for selling, for the world beyond the workbench. Childhood friends, two halves of the same craft. In 1875, they joined forces. Audemars would build, Piguet would sell, and together they created a company under both their names, Audemars Piguet. Here's what almost no one else in luxury can say. 150 years later, through world wars, crashes, and the near death of their entire industry, Audemars Piguet is still owned by the families who founded it. The only major watchmaker in the world that can say that. For the next 100 years, Audemars Piguet did not chase attention. They chased mastery. They built some of the most complicated watches ever made. In 1892, the world's first minute repeating wristwatch, a watch that could chime the time out loud, with hundreds of microscopic parts working in harmony. They made the smallest movements anyone had ever seen. They won medals at world fairs. While bigger companies grew louder and faster, Audemars Piguet stayed small, in that same quiet valley. The win worked so fine that other watchmakers, their own competitors, secretly hired them to build movements they couldn't build themselves. They weren't famous, they were respected by the only people who truly understood the craft. And that reputation, earned in silence over 100 years, was about to become the most valuable thing they owned, because a storm was coming that would nearly destroy every watchmaker in Switzerland. I want to pull out the mindset here, because it's the whole game. Almost every other great watchmaker eventually got bought by a giant luxury group. Audemars Piguet refused. They stayed independent. And being family-owned meant they could make a decision that compound over decades, not quarters. Think about what that means. When you're not desperate for this month's numbers, you can protect quality. You can say no. You can wait for the market to catch up to you instead of chasing it. Even today, with a nearly $3 billion business, they deliberately make only around 50,000 watches a year. That's tiny. They could make more. They choose not to, because scarcity and quality are worth more to them than volume. The wait lists for their most famous watches run for years. That is a company that understands something most businesses never learn. Being harder to get is not a problem to solve. It's a strategy. In the early 1970s, a catastrophe hit Switzerland. It was called the quartz crisis. Cheap electronic watches have arrived. Battery-powered, accurate, and almost free to make. Suddenly, the whole idea of a hand-built mechanical watch looked obsolete. Across Switzerland, Legendary companies collapsed. Tens of thousands of watchmakers lost their jobs. An entire way of life was dying. Audemars Piguet was starting at the end. And so, one night in 1971, the head of the company made a desperate phone call to a young, fearless designer named Gerald Genta. The brief was almost impossible. We need a steel sports watch unlike anything the world has ever seen, and I need the design by tomorrow morning. Genta sat down that night, and in a single evening, drawing inspirations from an old-fashioned diver's helmet, he sketched a watch with an 8-sided bezel, 8 exposed screws, and a bracelet that flowed straight out the case. By the morning, the drawing was done. They named it after a warship, the Royal Oak. And no one had any idea it would be either save the company or finish it. So how does a company this old stay this hungry? Look at what they're doing right now. Because it's the boldest move in the entire industry. They fired up their shops. For a century, luxury watches were sold through third-party jewelers. Audemars Piguet walked away from almost all of them, and now sells its watches almost entirely through its own spaces, called AP houses. But an AP house is not a store. There's no glass counter, no pushy salesperson. Feels more like a private apartment. You sink into a designer armchair, someone hands you a drink, and you talk watches with people who actually know their story. The product almost takes a backseat. They've even opened AP cafes and a spiral glass museum in the mountains that people fly across the world just to visit. They stopped selling watches. They started selling a world you want to belong to.
Back then, luxury meant gold, and steel was for tools. So when Audemars Piguet launched the steel watch, the Royal Oak, at around 10 times the price of a Rolex, and more than a solid gold Patek Philippe, everyone predicted a disaster. And at first, they were right. It sold slowly. Critics called it a head-scratcher. But the company held the line. And that steel watch went on to create a whole new category, saved the company, and became one of the most coveted watches on earth, with waitlist years long today. Now here's the lesson for your business. You're a plumber, you're a studio, you're a renovation crew. Your price is not set by your materials. It's not set by your hours, your parts, or whatever the guy down the street charges for his services. Your price is set by what you built and what it means for the person that's buying it. Steel can be worth more than gold if you make it mean more. So let's turn 150 years of Audemars Piguet into 5 moves you could use next week. 1. Price for value, not for materials. This is the big one. Stop building your prices from the parts up. A steel watch beat a gold one because of what it meant. What does your work mean for your customer? Peace of mind? A finished dream? A problem gone? Price that. 2. Master one thing deeply. Audemars stayed in one small valley and became the best. Don't be the company that does everything average. Be the one that does one thing better than everyone in the city. 3. Bury your weakness. One founder built, one founder sold. Be honest about which one you are. And partner, hire, or team up to cover the other half. You don't have to be great at everything. 4. Create your own category. The luxury sports watch didn't exist until they invented it. Don't fight for scraps in a crowded market. Name and own a lane that's yours. The premium version of your trade that no competitors offer. 5. Let scarcity work for you. They make fewer watches on purpose, and the wait lists, they're on for years. You don't have to take every job. Being booked out, selective, and a little hard to get is what makes people want you more and pay more. 2 friends in a frozen valley build watches by candlelight and stay true to their craft for 150 years. A company on the edge of collapse priced the steel watch higher than gold and refused to blink while the whole world called them crazy. The most valuable brands were never the cheapest. The market does not set up your prices, you do, by what you build and what you make them mean. The most valuable brands were never the cheapest. They were the ones brave enough to charge for what they were really worth. If this shifted something in you, save it or send it to another business owner that is still pricing themselves as a commodity. And if you want the full breakdown on how to build your business like a luxury brand, comment Steel and I'll break it down for you and I'll point you in the right direction. I'll see you in the next one.